The kitchen smelled like old coffee and cedar wood. The morning chill still lingered in the corners of the small house, though the sun had climbed high above the trees outside. A soft creak echoed through the floorboards as Harlan Whitaker made his way to the dining table, a folded lottery ticket clutched between his fingers. He sat down slowly, his knees cracking like old vinyl, and laid the ticket flat on the table. His eyes, rimmed with age and stories, scanned the numbers he had scribbled the day before. 12, 27, 5, 19, 10, and 32. Every number meant something. Margaret's birthday, the twins' birthdays, their wedding anniversary, even Ellis's birth year, the only nephew who still called on holidays. He reached for the black pen beside the ticket and circled each digit with care, as if blessing them. Then he leaned back and stared at the family photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It had been taken 15 years ago, in the same diner he had visited every Sunday with Margaret before she passed. Back when smiles were real and Sunday didn't feel like an empty hallway. The front door creaked open without a knock. Tatum stepped inside, her purse bouncing against her hip. She wore bright red lipstick and the same attitude she always carried. A kind of practiced impatience, like she was always late to something more important. "Dad, you need to stop wasting money on that garbage," she said, tossing her keys on the counter. "Lottery tickets. Seriously? You cannot even afford a new water heater, but you have $3 for fantasy." Harlan did not flinch. He folded the ticket and slipped it back into his shirt pocket. "It is just a habit. Something your mother and I used to do." Tatum rolled her eyes and walked to the fridge, opening it like she owned the house. "You are still clinging to that, huh? It has been almost 8 years, Dad." He did not answer. Instead, he rose, shuffled toward the stove, and poured himself a half cup of the lukewarm coffee left from earlier. He did not offer her any. Tatum turned around, arms crossed. "Look, I am only saying this because I care. You need to get your finances together. I am still behind on Kayla's dental bill, and Mason needs new cleats. We cannot keep bailing you out." Harlan blinked. "I have not asked you for anything." She raised an eyebrow. "No, but you will. You always do." Silence settled between them, the kind of silence that grows teeth. He set the coffee down and looked her straight in the eyes. "You know, I helped you with your first salon rent. Paid for those classes in Cincinnati when no one else believed in you." "And I said thank you," she replied, her tone sharp. "But that does not mean I am your emergency fund." For a second, Harlan felt the sharp sting of words not yet said, but he swallowed them. Tatum spotted the lottery ticket peeking from his pocket. Without asking, she reached over and snatched it. "Tatum," he said calmly. She laughed. "These are birthdays. You picked birthdays again. You always do this. You know the odds of winning with sentimental numbers? 0. She held the ticket up like it was proof of his failure. "You do not believe in anything you cannot measure, do you?" he said softly. She looked at him like he had spoken a foreign language, then tossed the ticket back onto the table. "Whatever. Just do not come crying when you are broke and eating cat food." She grabbed her keys and turned to leave. He spoke quietly behind her. "If those numbers win, I will know who to call." She paused at the door. "Good luck with that." And then she was gone. The silence returned. Harlan picked up the ticket again. He ran his thumb across the numbers, not to double-check, but to remember. These were not just digits. They were reminders of moments when he was still needed. He walked over to the small wooden box on the counter. Inside were Margaret's wedding ring, a receipt from their first road trip, and now, the folded ticket. He closed the lid and locked it. Later that night, he sat in his recliner, the glow of the old television casting soft light over the room. The local news anchor read the winning numbers slowly, one by one. 12, 27, 5, 19, 10, 32. Harlan sat very still. No smile, no gasp. He leaned forward, retrieved the ticket from the box, and checked once more. A perfect match. Still, no smile, only a quiet inhale. Then he whispered, "Well, that is something." He reached for a notepad and wrote a single sentence. If they never cared when I had nothing, I wonder who they will become now that I have everything. The clock ticked on, and outside, the October wind carried leaves down the empty street. The morning after the numbers matched, Harlan Whitaker woke up before the sun touched the windows. There was no celebration, no dancing in the kitchen, no phone call, just the quiet sound of an old man boiling water for instant coffee and the gentle clink of a spoon in a ceramic mug. He sat at the kitchen table, the lottery ticket beside him, untouched since last night. It lay next to Margaret's wedding ring box and a pad of lined paper with a blue pen resting diagonally across the top. The world had not changed, but Harlan had. Something had shifted inside. Something too quiet for thunder, but too strong to ignore. He took a slow sip from the chipped mug and exhaled. The local paper had been delivered late again. On the front page, a traffic pileup on Route 17, a story about rising heating costs, and in the bottom corner, a photograph of Maria Rodriguez, the state lottery agent in Columbus, smiling as she held up the winning numbers. He folded the paper neatly and tucked it away in the drawer. There would be no press, no parade, no announcements. He would wait. Not for applause, for proof. He pulled the notepad closer, clicked the pen once, and at the top of the page wrote in clean block letters, Test 1. Tatum. Monday. Morning scenario. Medical scare. Request $30 for heart check. Below that, he started a second section. Test 2. Finnegan. Tuesday. Midday. Scenario. Seeking investment advice with $12,000 in savings. And then, Test 3. Rodri. Wednesday. Evening. Scenario. Lost wallet. Needs cash for food. Ask for $150. He looked at the names for a long while, then turned to the window. The leaves outside were gold and red now. The wind carried them across the sidewalk like children running late for school. The house was silent. Not empty, but quiet in a way only houses of the grieving become. He walked to the closet and pulled out his best sweater, the navy blue one Margaret had bought him for their 40th anniversary. It still smelled faintly of pine and old perfume. He reached for the phone. The number to Tatum's salon was on a faded sticky note, barely sticking to the refrigerator. He dialed. She picked up after the third ring, her voice already stressed. "Hey, Dad, what is going on? I am with a client." "I won't keep you," Harlan said. I have not been feeling right. Tightness in the chest. Might be nothing, but I thought I should get it checked." Tatum's tone did not soften. "Then call your doctor." "I did," he said, lying carefully. "They said I need to get to the clinic today. It costs $30 just for the visit. I was wondering if you had it." A pause, just long enough to hear scissors snip in the background. "I have got bills, Dad," she said. "Rent's due tomorrow, and Kayla's braces aren't paying for themselves. Maybe if you stopped spending on stupid scratch-offs, you would have $30. "I see," Harlan said quietly. "Is that all? I gotta get back." He nodded, forgetting she could not see him. "That is all." She hung up without saying goodbye. He wrote the word "failed" under her name and drew a small line beside it. He placed the pen down and sat back. That was Monday. On Tuesday, he called Finnegan's office around noon. His son's voice was cheerful at first, formal like always. "Dad, this is a surprise. What can I do for you?" "I wanted your advice," Harlan began. "I came into a small sum, about $12,000. I was thinking about investing it. Not sure how. Thought you might know someone trustworthy." Finnegan hummed, thoughtful. "That's a decent chunk. Well, I could take a look at it. Actually, if you want, I can set up a portfolio for you myself. Safer that way. Keep it all in-house. Saves you tax headaches." "I do not know much about portfolios," Harlan replied. "I was just hoping to learn." "No offense, Dad, but learning takes time and a good bit of luck. You know what's smart? Delegating." Finnegan went on about real estate trusts and retirement bonds. By the end of the conversation, he had all but assumed control of the entire sum. He never once asked why Harlan suddenly had that much. He never asked if he was okay. Harlan ended the call with a polite thank you. Then he wrote, "Failed" beside Finnegan's name and closed the notepad. Wednesday night arrived with wind scratching against the windows. Harlan sat at the table with a blanket around his shoulders. He dialed Rodri, who answered from what sounded like a noisy bar. "Hey, old man, what's up?" "I lost my wallet," Harlan said, voice low. "Had all my cards in it. No dinner money tonight. Wondered if you could spare a little, maybe 150? Rodri laughed. "Man, if I had 150, I would not be drinking this cheap beer." "I see," Harlan said. Rodri added, "You sure it ain't under the couch cushions again?" "I checked." "Well, sorry, Pops. I am short till Friday. Try Tatum." "I already did." "Figures." The line went quiet. Harlan thanked him anyway, then hung up. He added "failed" beside Rodri's name and closed the notebook. He placed it back into the drawer, next to Margaret's ring, next to the ticket. Outside, the diner sign across the street blinked on in the early dark. Inside, Harlan wrote one more line. 3 chances. 3 answers. None of them yes. He stood and walked to the living room, staring at the old family photo one more time. Then, as if answering a memory, he whispered, "Ellis would have said yes." Monday came with gray skies and a wind that hummed through the trees. Harlan Whitaker sat by the window, not watching the world, but listening to it. The wind reminded him of Margaret's humming when she used to cook. Same rhythm, same softness. It made the house feel a little less empty for a while. He glanced down at the notebook, now resting open on the table. The first name stared back at him. Tatum. He had made the call that morning. He had felt the sting when she brushed him off like an appointment. But today, the sting grew heavier. He flipped the page and stared at the second name, Finnegan. That afternoon, he sat in his armchair, phone on speaker, pen in hand. He listened again to the recording he had made of yesterday's conversation, something he had never done before but felt compelled to keep. Finnegan's voice, so sure, so smooth, spoke of control and strategy, but nowhere in the call had he asked, "Are you all right, Dad?" Not even once. Harlan shook his head slowly, not in anger but in clarity. By Tuesday night, he could not sleep. He walked the creaky hallway barefoot, the floors cool under his soles. He passed the bedroom that once held warmth and now only held quiet. The guest room remained untouched, still made up in case one of the kids ever visited. No one had, not in years. Wednesday arrived, crisp and colder. He stood at the front window just after sunset, watching headlights pass by. A couple jogged by holding hands, their breath visible in the air. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked, and a porch light flicked on. The phone call to Rodri happened after dark. "Rodri here," came the familiar voice, half drowned in background noise. "It is, Dad," Harlan said, clearing his throat. "I lost my wallet today. Thought it might have fallen out at the hardware store. But no luck." Rodri sounded distracted. "That sucks. You cancel your cards?" "Yeah," Harlan lied gently. "I just needed some dinner tonight. Maybe $40 for groceries, or a little more if you can swing it." Rodri sighed. "Dad, I am tapped out this week. Sarah is writing me about rent and I already pulled from my savings." "I understand," Harlan replied, quiet. "Forget I asked." Rodri added, as if to soften the blow. "Next week, maybe. Once I get tips from the bar. Things are just tight, you know." Harlan nodded, still holding the phone. "Things are always tight," he said, mostly to himself. They hung up, and the house, once again, returned to silence. He closed the notebook. 3 names. 3 failures. Each one had been given a chance, a door to knock on, and each had turned away. He placed the notebook back in the drawer and poured himself a small glass of water. The faucet squeaked slightly, something Margaret used to complain about, but he had never fixed. He sat at the table and stared at the lottery ticket again. Still there. Still real. It was not about the money anymore. It was about what the money revealed, or perhaps what it no longer could fix. The next morning, he took a walk. The air was sharp and smelled like burning leaves. He passed the school where his kids once ran out laughing. The playground was empty now, the swings still swaying gently as if remembering better days. At the end of the block, he stopped by the post office to check his small mailbox. Inside was only a flyer from a local church and a coupon for canned soup. No letters, no birthday cards. Back home, he made himself a sandwich and sat by the window. A soft knock startled him. He opened the door to find his neighbor's grandson, Ellis, standing on the porch. "Hey, Uncle Harlan," the boy said, holding a bag of apples. "Grandma said you liked these." Harlan blinked. "Ellis, what a surprise." The boy shrugged. "I was at the farmer's market with her. I told her I wanted to stop by." He handed over the bag and smiled. "I hope you're doing okay." Harlan smiled, the first real smile in days. "I am, son. Thank you." Ellis stood for a moment like he wanted to ask something but didn't. "You want to come in?" Harlan offered. "I wish I could, but I promised Grandma I'd help unload the groceries. Maybe later this week?" "I'd like that." Ellis walked off down the path, hands in his hoodie pocket. Harlan stood in the doorway a long while, watching him go. Back inside, he placed the apples on the counter and wrote one more line in the notebook. Ellis, unasked, gave anyway. He looked down the list again. Tatum, failed. Finnegan, failed. Rodri, failed. Ellis, passed, without a test. He closed the notebook for the last time. That night, he made himself soup and turned on the old radio instead of the television. A man's voice told stories of small-town kindness and community events, and Harlan for once did not feel like a man waiting to be noticed. He felt like a man who finally saw things clearly. Saturday night at the Rusty Anchor Diner smelled like bacon grease and old jukebox songs. The booths were full, the coffee was flowing, and the waitress Linda moved like clockwork, refilling mugs and tossing paper menus with the grace of someone who had worked there longer than most marriages lasted. At a round table near the window, Harlan sat alone. He wore a brown corduroy jacket and the same navy blue sweater from earlier in the week. His hands rested on the table, folded neatly, as he stared at the empty seats around him. The silverware was wrapped in thin napkins, the menus already placed. 3 glasses of water had started to bead with condensation. He had arrived 20 minutes early. He always did. Linda passed by and gave him a warm pat on the shoulder. "The usual crowd tonight?" Harlan nodded. "They said they would be here." She smiled, already pouring him a cup of decaf. "Your kids always made this place a little louder." Harlan looked down at the steam rising from the cup. "It has been a while." It was 30 minutes past the hour when they arrived. Tatum was first, in heels too high for the sidewalk and a coat too thin for the fall breeze. Her children, Kayla and Mason, trailed behind her, glued to their phones, earbuds in place. She gave Harlan a quick kiss on the cheek and sat down without taking off her coat. "Hope this is quick, Dad," she said. "Mason has practice, and Kayla's got a thing later." Next came Finnegan, wearing a pressed shirt and a Bluetooth headset he did not remove during the first 10 minutes. His wife, Sarah, slid into the seat beside him, giving Harlan a polite nod. Finally, Rodri showed up in a wrinkled sweatshirt and jeans, hair still damp like he had just rolled out of the shower. He smelled faintly of beer and hand soap. He sat without saying hello and grabbed a menu. Linda arrived with a pot of coffee and asked, "Everyone ready to order?" They all murmured something. Tatum wanted a salad, Kayla ordered chicken fingers without looking up, and Mason asked for a burger. Finnegan declined coffee and checked his watch. Harlan did not order. Instead, he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and placed a small envelope on the center of the table. Next to it, he laid out a folded printout from the Ohio Lottery office, and then, slowly, a bank-issued cashier's check. The room around them remained loud, silverware clinking, plates being set, country music humming from the old speaker. But their table went still. "What is this?" Rodri asked, leaning forward. Harlan did not answer immediately. He watched each face. "I won the lottery," he said, voice calm. $700,000 after taxes, last Saturday night. No one spoke. Then Finnegan chuckled, light and rehearsed. "You're joking." "I am not." Tatum blinked, her hand twitching toward the envelope. "I have not claimed it yet," Harlan continued, "but it is real. And I asked you here to talk about what comes next. Mason finally looked up from his phone. We're rich? No, Harlan replied. I am. The statement landed like a rock in the middle of the table. I thought I should celebrate with my children, he added. So I asked myself, if I had nothing, would they still show up? Tatum frowned. Why would you even think that? Because I had nothing this week, and I asked for help. He turned to her first. I said I felt unwell. I asked for $30 to see a doctor. You told me to stop buying lottery tickets. Tatum shifted. I thought you were being dramatic. You do that sometimes. Do I? His voice was soft. He looked at Finnegan. I told you I had savings and wanted your advice. You never asked where the money came from. You just offered to manage it. All of it. Finnegan raised a brow. Dad, I work in finance. That is what I do. But I am not a client, Harlan said. I am your father. Finally, he turned to Rodri. I said I lost my wallet, asked for dinner money. You told me to check the couch cushions. Rodri leaned back, suddenly quiet. I kept notes, Harlan said, tapping his coat pocket. 3 names, 3 days, 3 answers. Linda came by with their food, interrupting the moment like a blessing. She placed plates in front of the kids, smiled, and walked away without asking questions. No one touched their food. I did not test you to punish you, Harlan said. I tested you because I needed to see what was left of this family. Sarah finally spoke. What about the will? You mentioned what comes next. Harlan nodded. Yes, I have made arrangements. Tatum narrowed her eyes. You are splitting it evenly, right? No, Harlan said simply. They all looked at him. I am leaving the house and $500,000 to Ellis. For a moment, no one understood. Who the hell is Ellis? Finnegan asked. Rodri looked up. The kid next door? Aunt June's grandson? Harlan smiled faintly. Yes. Tatum scoffed. You are giving it to some teenager? Are you kidding? He is the only one who checked on me in years, Harlan said. Brought apples without being asked. Called on holidays. Listened. Finnegan leaned forward. Dad, be reasonable. That is blood money. We are your children. You were born from blood, Harlan said quietly. But you forgot how to be family. Silence settled again, deeper than before. He placed a $20 bill under his plate and stood. Dinner is on me, he said. It is the least I can do. As he turned to leave, Linda called after him softly. Take care of yourself, Harlan. He paused in the doorway, looked back at the table, his children frozen, their mouths half open but with nothing to say. Then he stepped into the night. Outside, the wind picked up. And inside his coat pocket, his phone began to ring. It was Ellis. The night air outside the diner was cooler than expected. Harlan stood for a moment under the flickering neon sign, his breath soft clouds in the dark. He did not rush to his car. Instead, he let the cold settle into his coat, like truth settling into his bones. Behind him, through the wide glass window, he could see his children still at the table. Their mouths moved now, but the words came too late. That table had held birthdays, anniversaries, laughter once. But tonight it held only silence and shock. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Ellis again. Harlan did not answer. Not yet. He drove home with the radio off, headlights cutting a narrow path through the autumn dark. The streets of Milford were quiet, the kind of quiet only small towns knew, peaceful to some, suffocating to others. But tonight, to Harlan, it felt just right. The next morning, he sat at the dining table, the lottery ticket still folded beside a cup of black coffee. His lawyer had emailed the finalized documents at dawn, including the revised will. He read them twice, no doubt, no second thoughts. He had always imagined leaving behind something neat, something expected, a house divided evenly, a modest amount to each child. But that version of the future was built on hope, and hope, he had learned, needed evidence, and none had come. At noon, he picked up the phone and called Finnegan first. His son answered with a forced brightness. Hey, Dad, about last night. I will be quick, Harlan said. The will has been updated. I want you to hear it from me. Finnegan's voice dropped. Okay. I am leaving the house and $500,000 to Ellis. The rest I will keep for myself. There was a pause, then, You cannot be serious. I am. You are giving away our family home? To a neighbor? No, Harlan said. I am giving it to family. He hung up before Finnegan could reply. He called Tatum next. She did not answer. He left a message. I hope you and the kids are well. The decision is final. Then Rodri. His voice was quieter than usual. Dad, I was drunk last night. I was not thinking straight. I believe you, Harlan said. But that does not change anything. You are really doing this? Yes. There was a long pause. Rodri exhaled. Okay, he said softly. I get it. It was the first honest thing he had said in years. That evening, Harlan returned to the diner. Not for dinner, just coffee. Linda spotted him and walked over with a pot before he even asked. Rough night? She said gently. He smiled. Necessary one. She sat down across from him, just for a moment. You looked different when you walked out last night. Taller. He chuckled. Maybe I finally stood up straight. They shared a quiet moment before she was called away. He sipped his coffee slowly, watching couples and families drift in and out. No one looked twice at him, and that was fine. Before he left, he folded a $100 bill and tucked it into the checkbook with a simple note. Thank you for remembering my name. The next day, Harlan waited until evening to return home. The house greeted him with its usual stillness. He lit a lamp in the living room and stood near the mantel, looking at old photographs, some fading, some cracked at the edges. Margaret's smile stared back at him from behind glass. He whispered, I think you would have agreed. Then, as if rehearsed, he walked to the desk and picked up his phone. He dialed Ellis. Hey, Uncle Harlan, came the cheerful voice on the other end. I was wondering if you might stop by tomorrow. Of course. Everything okay? I would like to give you something. Actually, 2 things. Ellis hesitated. You don't have to... I know, Harlan said gently, but I want to. There was silence, then, okay, I will be there. They said their goodbyes. Harlan sat quietly for a while, then walked to the kitchen. He opened the small wooden box one more time. Inside were 3 things now: Margaret's ring, the winning ticket, and the first letter he had written to his children decades ago, the one Margaret had saved, a reminder of when hope was young. He closed the box and whispered into the room. Ellis did not ask for anything. That is why he deserves everything. Then he turned off the lights. And for the first time in years, the dark did not feel heavy. Sunday morning came with soft light and the hush of wind through bare trees. The sky above Milford was pale, almost white, as if the day itself had taken a deep breath and decided to stay still. Harlan stood in the hallway, one hand resting on the doorframe, the other adjusting the buttons of his coat. His shoes were polished, his collar straight, and in his jacket pocket, folded neatly, were the official documents: the claimed lottery ticket receipt, the cashier's check, and a notarized letter of inheritance. He took one last look around the house. The framed photograph of Margaret still sat on the mantel, just as he had left it. The couch cushions remained fluffed from the night before, the radio still tuned to the classical station Margaret used to love. He let the music play as he walked out the door. 2 hours later, he stood in line at the Ohio Lottery office in Columbus. The woman behind the counter, Maria Rodriguez, the same smiling agent from the newspaper photo, welcomed him with a warm nod. You brought it with you? She asked kindly. Harlan handed over the documents without a word. She scanned the ticket, verified the number, and smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Whitaker. Would you like to take it all now or split it into yearly payments? All at once, he said softly. She nodded and tapped at her keyboard. The check was printed. $700,000, signed, sealed, and handed across the counter with a practiced smile. Any plans? She asked. Yes, he replied. but they are simple ones." He thanked her, folded the check, and placed it carefully into a leather envelope. On the way out, he tipped his cap to the janitor sweeping the floor. No one else looked twice at him. On the drive back, he passed the diner but did not stop. Instead, he parked near Riverside Park, the same small park where he had walked with Margaret in the early years, pushing strollers and watching ducks drift over the water. The bench they used to sit on was still there, weathered and etched with initials. He sat, leaned back, and let the cold air wrap around him. Children played in the distance, their laughter like wind chimes. Somewhere behind him, a jogger's footsteps tapped a steady rhythm on the path. He pulled out a pen and signed the envelope. To Ellis, for all the things you gave without being asked. That night, Ellis arrived just after 6, wearing a flannel jacket and holding a small bag of cookies. "My grandma insisted," he said, sheepish. "She still thinks people should bring something when they visit." Harlan chuckled. "She is a wise woman." They sat at the kitchen table. No big speech, no dramatic pause. Harlan simply slid the envelope across the table. Ellis stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "Open it." The boy did. His eyes widened. "This. I cannot. I do not understand." Harlan looked him in the eye. "You did something my own children forgot how to do. You remembered me. You cared. That means more to me than anything." Ellis shook his head, stunned. "But I never did it expecting this." "I know," Harlan said. "That is why you deserve it." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ellis reached out and placed his hand gently over Harlan's. "Thank you," he whispered. "No," Harlan said. "Thank you." Later that night, after Ellis left, Harlan sat near the window with the lamp off. The house did not feel empty. It felt full, in the way a place does when peace finally arrives. The wind moved through the trees again. Somewhere down the block, a porch light blinked on. Harlan closed his eyes for a moment and thought of Margaret. Maybe she would have questioned his choice. Maybe not. But he knew this much. He had not just passed down money. He had passed down proof that kindness mattered, even when no one watched. That was the real inheritance. And maybe, just maybe, family had found its way home. On a quiet Sunday evening in Milford, the last light of day slipped gently across the worn wood of Harlan Whitaker's kitchen table. There were no arguments now, no rush to prove a point, only the hush of a home finally at peace. The air carried the faint scent of apples from a gift given without request, a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures hold the deepest meaning. In that stillness, the truth had settled, not with noise or triumph, but with the calm certainty of a man who knew his worth and had chosen to leave behind more than just money. The heart of his story is simple. Hold fast to your dignity, and when the time comes, defend the truth of who you are with quiet conviction. Justice does not always roar. Sometimes it arrives in the steady hand that gives to those who have given freely. It is the quiet kindness, the unheralded visit, the call that comes without a reason. These are the treasures that endure when all else fades. Like a lamp in the window on a winter's night, even the smallest act of care can light the way through life's darkest turns. Perhaps that is why this tale feels less like an ending and more like a beginning. The house on the corner still stands, the leaves still fall each autumn, and somewhere inside, the memory of one man's choice will keep glowing, long after names have faded from paper. Take a moment to reflect on who, in your own life, shows up without being asked. And if this story has warmed you, let its warmth travel farther. Share it in your own way with someone who might need reminding that their kindness matters.